All right, on this video, I'm going to show you how to solve radical equations that I call level 3. It's where you have a radical equal to a variable. So when you square both sides here, you're going to get an n squared, and then the square root box goes away, just like we've been doing. So negative 75 plus 20n. Now you have a quadratic. You have an n squared and you have an n. So you have to set this equal to 0. I would move both of these over and have your n squared stay positive. So when I move these over, they change signs. What you're basically doing is subtracting 20n and adding 75 to both sides. There's not much room over here to write that. So that all cancels out. And you have n squared minus 20n plus 75 equals 0. Now, these today will factor really easily because you're going to have a 1 on your n squared. So I would factor them. I'd put a 75 up there, and I'd put a negative 20 there. If you want to use the quadratic formula, that's perfectly fine. It will work. So two numbers that multiply to 75, and you can use your factor sheets for these, would be 15 and 5. So I need a negative 15 and a negative 5 to add to negative 20. So that gives me n minus 15 and n minus 5 equal to 0. So that gives me n minus 15 equals 0 and n minus 5 equals 0. This gives me n equals 15 and n equals 5. Now, a new step that you have to do at this level, because we get this quadratic, is check both of the answers and see if they both work. Sometimes they both won't work. Sometimes one of them will give you a negative. So you take 15 and you plug it in. So 15 is equal to the square root of negative 75 plus 20 times 15. And so you take your calculator and you punch in negative 75 plus 20 times 15, and you get 225. And the square root of 225 is 15. So 15 equals 15. So it works. Sorry, I couldn't see that. So that's a solution. If you try 5, you're going to get 5 equals, you're plugging 5 in for n. Okay, I'm going to make this smaller so you can see it all. So you're plugging 5 in for n, so 5 equals the square root of negative 75 plus 20 times 5. So negative 75 plus 20 times 5 is the square root of 25. So they both work because the square root of 25 is 5. You get 5 equals 5. Sometimes you'll get 5 equals negative 5, but it worked. So on that one, we have 2 answers. Okay, so this has more steps to it than the ones we've been doing. Okay, so let's do number 2. We square both sides. So you get 165 plus 4b is equal to b squared. Move everything over toward the thing that's squared because that's positive, and we want to keep it positive if you're going to factor. If you're going to do quadratic formula, it doesn't matter. So I have 0 equals b squared, then minus 4b minus 165. So I need two numbers that multiply to negative 165 and add to negative 4. So I'm going to take 165 divided by 5, and I get 33. 165 divided by 15 is 11. So it's a negative 15 and a positive 11. So b minus 15 and b plus 11 equals 0. That gives me b equals 15 and b equals negative 11. So plug those in, and you're going to get the square root of 165 plus 4 times 15 is equal to 15. You're checking to see if that's true. So 165 plus 4 times 15 on my calculator gives me radical 225, and that does equal 15. You get 15 equals 15, so 15 works. If you plug in 11, you have the square root of 165 plus 4 times negative 11 equals negative 11. I can tell this isn't going to work because this square root is positive. If you type it in, you get 165 plus 4 times negative 11, you get radical 121. It's supposed to equal negative 11. But the square root of 121 is positive 11. It's not plus and minus because we didn't put the square root in. The square root was in the equation to begin with, and it's the positive square root. There's not a negative out in front. It's not plus or minus. And so 11 can't equal negative 11, so we don't use that solution. We only get one answer. Okay, let's do number 3. Square both sides. You get 48 minus 13x equals x squared. Move everything over to the side with the x squared. 0 equals x squared plus 13x minus 48. Negative 48 and 13. Again, you can use quadratic formula here if you want to. That's going to be a positive 16 and a negative 3. So x minus 3, x plus 16 equals 0. That gives you x equals positive 3 and x equals negative 16. So if I plug in 3, 48 minus 13 times 3, and I want it to equal 3, 48 minus 39 is the square root of 9, and that's going to equal 3. So x equals 3 works. I can tell this isn't going to work because it has a negative on it. If I plug it in, I have the square root of 48 minus 13 times negative 16, and I want it to equal negative 16. This is a positive number. I'm going to get 256. I'm going to get the square root of something that equals 16, but it's the positive square root. There's not a negative out there. So a positive number can't equal negative 16, so you cross it off. Okay? This one's a little bit shorter. So we square both sides. You get 16m is equal to m squared. Move it over toward the m squared, so 0 equals m squared minus 16m. I would factor out an m. You can use the quadratic if you want to. So 0 is equal to m times m minus 16. This gives me m equals 0. This gives me m equals 16. Now I can tell they're both going to work. If I plug 0 in, I get the square root of 16 times 0 equal to 0. That's going to work. And the square root of 16 times 16 is equal to 16. That's going to work. So I have those two answers. Okay, that's the first 4. The next video is the last 2.